Great. So good evening, everybody. Welcome. Um, I'll just go through some kind of extended procedural kind of bits of information that I will share related to kind of this setup here on the Zoom and on YouTube, and then we'll kind of try to get into our regular routine where we will hear from the applicants and we'll have an opportunity for questions and we'll hear from the public as well. So I'll just start. I'll just kind of greet you by saying good evening, members of the committee and members of the public. I will now call the Committee of Adjustment to order, as this meeting is being held electronically due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I will go over some rules of procedure for the benefit of the members and the viewing public. This meeting is being streamed live via the City of Brantford YouTube account. All members of the committee will be muted upon entering the meeting and throughout when they are not speaking in order to reduce background noise. All webcams for committee members shall be turned on throughout the meeting. If a member does have to leave their seat, please leave their camera on so that we can recognize that you are away. Staff will be requested to join the video meeting should they need to answer any questions of any members. Any member of the committee participating shall indicate that they wish to speak or ask questions by pressing the raise hand button on the participant list screen. Your hand will stay raised until you are called upon, and staff will lower your hand when you have been called on by the chair. Movers and seconders of motions shall be indicated by raising your hand on the camera, and the chair will call out who the mover and seconder are. All members of the committee participating via online video conference will vote by physical show of hands. A recorded vote will be taken by the clerk. Applicants, agents, owners, and delegations are participating in this Zoom or on the phone accordingly. All persons wishing to speak to the items on the agenda were required to register by 9 a.m. Any delegations received in written format have been provided to the committee members and will form part of the meeting record. In the event that a connection or service interruption occurs that does affect quorum or the Committee of Adjustment, we may take a 15-minute recess to regain quorum. If quorum is not achieved, then the meeting will be adjourned. So at this moment, I'll ask the clerk to take attendance through the roll call.
So now I will now take attendance for the meeting. Just unmute yourself when your name is called to state that you are here. Tara Gaskin?
Present.
Lee Reiner? Greg Kempa?
Present.
Virginia Kershaw?
Here.
Chris Brooks?
Present.
And Chair Nemesniak.
Present. So I will ask the members at this time if there are any conflicts of interest that should be declared. And seeing none, we will move along with our agenda this evening. So at this point, I will kind of repeat that typical jargon that I have at the beginning of each meeting, and this is good information for the members of the public as well as the applicants. So this meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss minor variance, consent, and severance applications, and to give members of the public the opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, or provide comment either in support or against an application. Each hearing is generally dealt with in accordance to the order that they appear on the agenda. In the event that the hearing is not completed on the date, it will be adjourned at a later date, at which time the committee may hear further submissions. At the conclusion of each hearing, this committee will make a decision on each application. The names of those individuals who speak on any item tonight will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing further notice of any hearing, including a copy of the committee's decision, please contact the city's clerk's department. Minor variance decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the committee's decision, and consent decisions are final if there are no appeals 20 days after the notice of the decision has been issued. So tonight's order of delegations will be as follows. We will have the applicant join us to present the details of their proposal, and we'll have an opportunity for questions from the committee. We'll next invite staff kind of in the room to provide the details of the staff report and the recommendation, followed by some questions from the committee. At this time, we will then open it up to the members of the public. So any delegations who have registered to speak on a particular item, this is the opportunity for those members to join us and present any comments or concerns. And then we'll have an opportunity for the committee to ask any questions of clarification from either the applicant or staff, or perhaps it's an opportunity for the agents or applicants to come back and provide some clarification on any comments that were made by the public. So with that being said, we will work our way through the first item on the agenda, which is a minor variance application for 46 Jarvis Street. So I will now call upon the applicant, agent or owner to speak to the committee regarding the application. And Mr. Neal has joined us. So Mr. Neal, I'll just get you to state your name and address for the record.
Yep. Hi, can you hear me okay? Yep. So Andrew Neal, I'm with TJ Developments for 46 Jarvis Street. Our address is 142 West Street here in Brantford. And so for this, I'm the applicant, the developer, and the general contractor for 46 Jarvis Street. This application is to permit a minimum front yard of 5.1 meters, whereas 6 meters is required, as well to permit a minimum rear yard of 6.1 meters, where 7.5 meters is required. This is for the construction of a single-family home at 46 Jarvis Street.
Great. Do you have any questions from the committee members to the applicant? So I'll just ask one at this time. We've seen the drawing, the as-built survey of the foundation that is included in our report. It looks like it's just a small feature with as part of the foundation that is within the required setback, which triggered the variance. Yeah.
Yep.
Is that just a kind of a feature of the design, or is that?
Yeah, on the front yard, it's just a little nib of the garage that sticks out, which comes into the front yard, and the rear yard. It's just a minor variance that we're asking for.
Okay.
It's minor in nature.
Right. Okay. Any further questions from the committee to the applicant? And seeing none, we'll invite staff in to present the details of the report and the recommendation.
Chair, members of the committee, planning staff have received an application for a minor variance application for 46 Jarvis Street. The property is located on the east side of Jarvis Street, south of Spring Lane, and north of Grand River Avenue. The lands are designated low-density residential in the official plan and zoned residential conversion zone in zoning bylaw 16090. The property was recently created through consent application B10-2019. Next slide. The applicant has constructed a single detached dwelling on the property. Next slide. Next slide. The dwelling unit was not constructed within the conformity of the front yard and rear yard regulations of the zoning bylaw. To address the zoning deficiencies, the applicant is seeking relief from the following sections of the zoning bylaw. Section 7.8.2.5 to permit a minimum front yard of 5.1 meters, whereas 6 meters is required, and section 7.8.2.6 to permit a minimum rear yard of 6.1 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required. In order for a minor variance to be approved, an application must meet the 4 tests of section 45(1) of the Planning Act. The reduction in the minimum front yard and rear yards is minor in nature because it is not expected to have an adverse impact on adjacent properties. The portions of the properties abutting the subject's lands do not contain any buildings or structures that could result in privacy concerns. The minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land, as it will permit the occupation of the dwelling that was approved through the site plan control application. Through the site plan process, the development was vetted to ensure that all drainage and stormwater management would function appropriately. As the building footprint slightly is modified from what was previously approved, the applicant has provided an updated grading plan illustrating that the grading and stormwater management will function appropriately. The intent of the minimum rear yard regulation in the zoning bylaw is to ensure that there is sufficient room for amenity space and to reduce concerns of privacy and overlook. It is planning staff's opinion that the rear yard will still be adequate in amenity space and that there are no concerns regarding privacy or overlook to the neighboring properties. Regarding the front yard, the intent of the zoning bylaw is to create a uniform street edge and provide sufficient area for landscaping. The proposed front yard setback will still provide this adequate area for landscaping and is in keeping with the character of the front yards setbacks of the adjacent buildings along Jarvis Street. Section 1811(2) of the official plan lists the criteria for minor variance applications, including if the adequate provision is made for vehicular access and off-street parking on a lot, and the building coverage is not excessive. Planning staff are satisfied that the general intent of the official plan is maintained and that as the proposed variance will not impede vehicular access or off-street parking and will continue to meet the minimum lot coverage requirements. Planning staff are supportive of the application. The minor variance as proposed will facilitate appropriate infill development that makes efficient use of the land. This type of infill development represents good land use planning that is encouraged through the Planning Act, the PPS growth plan, and the official plan. For reasons mentioned above, the minor variances satisfy the section criteria 45(1) of the Planning Act, and staff recommend that application A07-2020 be approved.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions from the committee to staff? Okay, so seeing none. So at this point, I will open it up to the members of the public. At this point, I can state on this particular application, as this meeting is being held virtually, members of the public that were wishing to speak on this item were required to register before prior to 9 a.m. today. And I can state that no members of the public have registered to speak on this application. So I would imagine that there are no questions of clarification, either from the applicants or from the committee. And at this point, I'll ask if the committee members are comfortable to move a motion, put a motion on the floor. So Virginia, mover. And I'll look for a seconder. Lee? Is there any discussion on the motion? To read it out. Virginia, would you mind reading out that motion? And the
Yes, I'll
recommendation?
move that application A07-2020 requesting relief from the zoning bylaw to permit a minimum front yard of 5.1 meters, whereas 6 meters is required, and to permit a minimum rear yard of 6.1 meters, whereas 7.5 meters is required, be approved, including clause B and C of the recommendation in the agenda.
Perfect. Lee, you still happy with that? Okay. Any discussion amongst the committee members on the motion? Seeing none, we will call the vote. So this will be a recorded vote, and we will do it by hand.
Members of the committee, if you could please raise your hand and leave it raised until your name is called. All of those in favor of the item before you, please raise your hand. Okay, so Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Dan Namizniak, Greg Kempa, Lee Reiner, Chris Brooks, Item 3.1 is approved unanimously on a recorded vote.
Perfect. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is another minor variance application for 190 Linden Road. Is the applicant, owner, or agent present? Hello, Ray. Welcome. Welcome to the room.
Thank you.
We, at this point, I'll just ask if you state your name and address for the minutes, and then the floor is yours, and just give us the details of your proposal.
All right. My name is Ray Narula of New City Church at 190 Linden Road here in Brantford.
Okay, great. And the details of your request?
Okay, I was, has Eric Wong joined us tonight? No?
So it's my understanding that he is here, and he may just be having some connection issues.
Okay, he would be the best to explain everything as he is the applicant. I am the owner.
Yep.
But I can answer any questions in the meanwhile.
Okay,
Oh, Eric is there. I see him now.
there he is.
Hi.
Welcome, Eric. We are just about to hear from you.
Yes.
And you're going to provide us with just a little bit of a briefing on your minor variance application request. So
Sure.
if you want to start, Ray's already introduced himself, but if you want to introduce yourself and
Okay.
And then provide us with those details.
Sure. My name is Eric. I'm working for a sign company. We are applying for a permit for 190 Linden Road, Brantford. It's for New City Church, Brantford. And we're replacing a light box sign with a digital LED sign for the church. Now, when we put it on, we found out it is too close to the residential zone to the north. So here we are applying for a reduction for the setback from the residential zone. The bylaw says it's 40 meters. Now we're only at about 21 meters from the middle of the street, which is a Linden Road. And yeah, the sign location is actually very far from the actual residential zone, but the city, I guess the zone has been divided that way. So the parcel line is in the middle of the street. So that's what we're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the committee members to the applicant? And seeing none, I will turn it over to staff who will have some visuals for us and provide us with the recommendation in the report.
Chair, members of the committee, planning staff have received a minor variance application for 190 Linden Road. The property is located on the south side of Linden Road, west of Corporate Place. The lands are designated general commercial area in the official plan and zoned general commercial area C8 zone in the zoning bylaw. Next slide. A place of worship, New City Church, Brantford, exists on the subject lands. The applicant is proposing to retrofit an existing west-east facing ground sign on the property, as seen here. There are currently 3 double-sided sign faces existing on the ground sign. The sign face at the top will remain untouched. The proposed retrofitting will replace the middle sign with a double-sided electronic message display and remove the bottom sign in its entirety. The proposed changes will result in a reduction of 1 sign for a total of 2 sign faces. The proposed double-sign electronic message display will be used by the church to display information and event details. To facilitate the replacement sign as proposed, the applicant is seeking relief from section 478.4.12 of chapter 478 of the municipal code to permit the flashing illumination of a sign to be located 21 meters from a residential zone, whereas a minimum of 40 meters is required. In order for a minor variance to be approved, an application must meet the 4 tests of section 45 of the Planning Act. Section 478.412 of chapter 478 of the municipal code states no flashing illumination of signs shall be permitted within 40 meters or 131.2 feet of any residential zone, except where the construction of the building or structure upon which the sign is erected is in such a way that any sign is not visible from a residential zone. This section of the municipal code speaks specifically to the residential zone. In this instance, the zone line is located within the center line of the Linden Road right-of-way, 21 meters from the proposed signage. The residential properties are respectively located on the north side of the Linden Road right-of-way, approximately an additional 19 meters from the zone line, from the middle of Linden Road. And there's a total approximately of 40 meters from the proposed signage on the south side of Linden Road to the residential property line, and the location of the existing apartment buildings are further beyond that. In addition, the existing residential buildings are set back approximately 45 meters from the property line along Linden Road. This distance between the existing residential buildings and the zone line provides an additional area between the residential use and the proposed signage. It is planning staff's opinion that the additional distance of the approximately 65 meters beyond the 21 meters will mitigate any potential impact to the residential uses. The design and layout of the existing ground sign and the proposed west-east facing signage does not directly face the residential buildings, but rather faces the pedestrian and vehicular traffic that moves along Linden Road. Planning staff are of the opinion that this proposed west-east sign face will not have an impact, as the view and light from the sign is minimized visually, as it will not directly face the residential uses. Also, consistent with the municipal code, the agent has advised that the sign will not be in operation between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following day to ensure the sign is not visible from any habitable living space within the residential zone. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed minor variance is minor in nature and will not have adverse impact on the residential uses on the north side of Linden Road. The minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land, as the proposed retrofitting will result in a reduction of a total of 1 double-sided sign faces for a total of 2 double-sided sign faces where there are currently 3. The intent of the minimum setback between the signs with flashing illumination and the residential zones in Chapter 478 is to ensure that there's no negative impact from the illumination on the sign to the living areas of the residential units within the residential zone. It is planning staff's opinion that the proposed setback and the sign placement will still provide this adequate distance to limit the impact of the signage on the residential uses. Additionally, there are 2 rows of trees, one privately owned and the second row of boulevard trees that are maintained by the city that are located on the north side of Linden Road and will assist with appropriately screening any potential impact on the residential uses within the immediate area. Within the immediate area, there are currently 2 existing electronic message display signs along Linden Road. And in consultation with staff in the city's property standards and bylaw section, no complaints have been received regarding these existing signs. The existing place of worship meets all regulations for the general commercial zone in the zoning bylaw. No relief is being sought from the zoning bylaw, and planning staff are of the opinion that the intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. The official plan aims to provide a high standard of building and site design, landscaping and signage, and provide a pedestrian-friendly streetscape within intensification corridors, which this property is located within. The high standard of design is to be encouraged through the zoning bylaw, Chapter 478 of the Municipal Code, which includes the sign regulations. The proposed retrofitting of the existing ground sign will modernize the sign and also reduce the total number of sign faces on the subject land. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposal will maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. One member of the public had contacted planning staff in regards to the proposed minor variance application. Planning staff discussed the concerns with the member of the public and clarified that the variance speaks to the proximity to the residential zone line rather than the residential property line, which is an additional 20 meters from the signage. Planning staff advised that the signage will continue to be west-east facing and will be required to be shut off during the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following day. The member of the public provided that the discussion clarified the relief requested and stated that there was just a continued concern about the brightness of the sign. The minor variance as proposed will facilitate the retrofitting of a ground sign at a distance that will not negatively impact the surrounding residential uses. Planning staff are of the opinion that the minor variance satisfies the criteria set out in Section 45(1) of the Planning Act and recommends that application A09-2020 be approved.
Great, thank you. Lee, I see you've raised your digital hand. I will call upon you now and you can ask your question of staff.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, I'm just wondering, we've had these signs before, but is there any requirement with regards to the brightness, the lumen, that sort of thing? I see that it has to be shut off between 11 and 7 at night, but is there any requirements with how bright it can or cannot be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the sign bylaw speaks to light as well as the speed of which the sign changes, and from our discussions with the agent that they will be meeting all other requirements of the Chapter 478 of the Municipal Code.
Okay, thank you.
Greg, you had a question there?
I did, Mr. Chair, thank you. Along the same lines as Lee was talking about, I too recall that we've had these conversations before about the brightness. We asked the people on Brant Ave to turn theirs down West Street. And if memory serves, is there not a development plan for west of this location that was going to house a retirement facility, 4 or 5 stories? So I wonder if somebody's going to ask that question, and so I'll ask that of staff. And I guess the second question was, and perhaps too late to ask the agent, but is the design of the sign such that the messaging is for activities of the church only, or would they be looking to make this is this a commercial enterprise? Are they renting out? Are they selling off advertising space along the road? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in regards to properties in the proximity of the of the sign. The bylaw specifically states 40 meters, and the two properties to the north are the one property to the north is the only one located within that 40 meters. So the other properties, it would not be impacting. And sorry, your did you have any further questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Joe Muto, Manager of Development, would I be able to chime in and maybe clarify some of those questions?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of committee. Joe Muto, Manager of Development Planning. With respect to the first question Mr. Rayner had raised, there is some enforcement issues with respect to these signs as it relates to luminosity and the brightness of these signs. Council for the City of Brantford has recognized that and has provided a motion to enforcement staff and building staff per se to review this, and they will be coming forward later this year with a staff report and recommendation addressing digital and electrical signs. I think, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kempa had raised a question regarding the neighboring property. I'm not sure in terms of the actual distance, but it is somewhat removed from this site. It would face this sign at some point in the future. There currently is no site plan control application for that site, but council at the latter part of last year did approve a rezoning amendment for that. It would basically be a retirement home that would be, I believe, 5 to 6 stories in height. And I think Mr. Kempa, Mr. Chairman, had raised a second question about third-party advertising. Perhaps Ms. Mathers could elaborate on that portion. I do not think third-party billboards are permitted, but perhaps if the applicant is still available or agent, they can probably be able to clarify that themselves as well. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Joe. And we will bring the applicants back at the appropriate time once we've closed the public portion to allow them to provide that detail of clarification. Any additional questions of staff from the committee? Seeing none. Oh, Chris.
So I'm just trying to clarify this. If the bylaw hasn't been put in place for the illumination of the sign, if this gets approved tonight, is it like, say it was too bright or something like that, is it grandfathered so that when the bylaw comes into place, then it could still have its brightness? Like, so like say for instance, we approve this now and it's like really bright. And then staff comes up with a bylaw that says, okay, now it has to be lower in brightness because it was approved prior to the new bylaw put in place. Would that mean that the sign could still be really bright if that's what had happened?
Mr. Chairman, to Madam Brooks, very good question. I think what we haven't got to that point yet. What we can relay back to building department staff when they are in consultation and preparation of the staff report, that perhaps there's some regulation we can incorporate into that policy with respect to not being grandfathered, and that all bright signs are bright and they should be addressed accordingly. Now, I can say we can ask them to do that, but that doesn't mean that that's something that that they'll do, but we'll take it under advisement. As it stands now, it's not so much as a zoning bylaw where you automatically are grandfathered if you were, if you were established prior to the bylaw coming into force and effect. We've noticed that there are issues in terms of those brightness, and I think one of the members here mentioned Brant Avenue. So enforcement officers are out there patrolling and addressing accordingly based on those complaints. But as Ms. Mathers has already indicated here, we talk about the actual zone boundary, and the distance as identified in the staff report is quite large in terms of that separation. And the buildings themselves are even landscaped on the private edge as well as the city boulevard edge with municipal trees. They don't directly face those existing residents right now. And as we're aware from and what we've indicated in the staff report is that the owner is really been or has identified that they're not going to have those lights on. And I think the more important part here is that we do have a bylaw that is also identified in the staff report that specifies that regardless if they're going to do it at their goodwill or not, that there is a bylaw that says that they need to turn those signs off at a certain time.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, does that help? Is that helpful?
Yes,
thank you.
yes, thank
Thank
you. My only other concern would have been if there, I think Greg had mentioned it, that if there was a proposed retirement residence in the future, it'll be on the same side of the street as the sign. And if, I don't know whether, I'm not aware of where it is, but since Greg raised the point, I wasn't sure like how far it is away from this particular sign. So the fact that it would be on the same side of the street, that would be rather distracting to the residents if it becomes a retirement facility. So that was only my other concern.
That's great. Thank you. I think the residents at the retirement home would be in bed by 5 o'clock anyway. So any further questions from staff? Okay, seeing none, we will open up the floor to the public. I can state that there were no delegations registered prior to the 9 a.m. cutoff today. However, staff did mention the email received from a resident, which was circulated to us earlier today, which we had the opportunity to review. So with the public portion being considered, we will go and invite our applicants and agent back for clarification on some of those comments made by the committee and staff.
Okay. I don't see Eric on, so I'll do my best to answer your questions. Particularly the sign facing east and west, the concern about the residential building that may be coming in the near future would be, you have to remember there is a furniture store right beside us. They have a longer sign equal to us. That would, of course, block some of the lighting. Then there is the dealership that has their own signages. And then there is La Coco across the street, which would be really more the concern. La Coco has a digital sign currently intact, and that would be right across from the new residential building. So it's a great deal ways away if there's any concern on that matter.
That's great. Eric, did you have anything more to add to that?
Yes, regarding to the sign, we will install a dimmer on the sign. Well, the dimmer will sense the ambient light and dim itself accordingly. So it's all software program. So basically, even you pass the bylaw that's lower the brightness at night, we can still do that after installation. So everything just click a button away. So nothing's fixed. and there is a software timer as well. So now we are allowed to 11 to 7. Even in the future, there is a retirement home, and we are only allowed to 10 to 7. We can change this as well. So it's all computer programmed, so it's very easy to change.
Okay, great. I appreciate the comments, the additional comments there. So I'll just ask if are there any further questions? Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the agent, so I know that there's some other signs there, but I'm envisioning here a dynamic sign where we've got active changes in the messaging. So it's a movement screen. It's not necessarily a static, illuminated picture or message. Is that fair to say?
So this will be like something like a PowerPoint slide. So
Okay.
basically, we are not planning putting any video on there, if that's what you're referring to. There's only this is like a PowerPoint slide with background of a picture and some kind of text message on the top. And the duration of the slides we can change. Whatever the bylaws wants us to, duration 30 seconds like Toronto. And even some area they allow 20, 25. It's all can be done by the computer.
Right. And I guess the second question I wanted to ask, is the messaging specific and limited to activities going on at the church? Or are you, frankly, looking to sell the signage to third parties so they can advertise hamburgers or car sales or what have you?
Can I leave that question to the pastor? Because it's the owner of the sign.
All right, thank you. No, we never considered doing that, but that's a great idea if you want us to, if you want to grant us the permission. No, our intent is really just to replace, we have a lettering board there. It's antiquated, the letters fall off. In the wintertime, nobody wants to go out there and change a messaging board in the dead of winter, take out a ladder. It's not safe and it's quite cold. So just to catch up with the times, we all have LCD TVs in our homes. And I think it's very appropriate that we can sit at the comfort of a computer and our front desk can change and say, Sunday services, this is what to look forward to. Our youth meetings, our community programs are coming up. And it's just a way to keep in touch with the community and let them know we're here for them. And some of the outreaches we're doing to include them as a part of the North End. So that's really the intent and the extent of it. But if you want to give me permission to have a hamburger joint advertised and recoup some of our costs, we might consider that in the future, but it will be discussed at a board level if you grant us that. But I'm only saying that as a side joke.
Thank you, Reverend.
Perhaps this time I'll invite our planner back to provide some additional comments.
So just in regards to the flashing and animation and moving of and changing of messages on electronic message displays, our bylaw under Chapter 478 of the Municipal Code speaks to that under Section 478.4.14. It regulates how often the sign can change, and it is subject to 3-second intervals. It can't have such lighting as like track lighting or continuous movement message. And this sign is not contemplated for nor meet the requirements of a bylaw, for a billboard. So no secondary sign messages would be able to be displayed. It does not meet the requirements of the bylaw.
Great, thank you. Greg, does it help? It's pretty clear. Okay, so if there's any no further questions from the committee to either the applicants or staff, I will ask if the committee is prepared to move a motion. Lee, I'll just have you read the recommendation.
Through Mr. Chair, I move that application A09/2020 be approved.
Great. Do I have a seconder? Tara? Any discussion on the motion? Greg, you'd like to discuss?
So I appreciate that when the bylaws are written, 40 meters was probably a long way for a sign. These kind of signs don't respect 40 meters. So if we remember back to the issue that we had on Brand Ave, that complaint came from the apartment building on the other side of St. Paul's. So light travels a long way. So I get that there isn't a retirement home there now. I think we should expect one. And chances are somebody's going to be calling City Hall to say, can we turn that sign down? Because it's shining in my living room. I think we're just asking for a problem later, right? So that's just where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Any further comments to Greg's? I'll just add that, Greg, I remember the application for the Brand Ave billboard, and it was significantly larger, if we remember. So at least this one is much smaller, and the technology seems more advanced as that's just how it gets. So
That's fair.
much smaller sign. Kind of geared towards the new city church purpose. The Brand Ave was definitely a third party kind of rent your space and get as many images up there kind of per minute as they could. So I'll just leave my comments there. And any further comments before I call the vote? Okay, we will call the vote. Again, recorded vote. All those in favor?
All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised until your name is called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Dan Nemizniak, Chris Brooks, Lee Reiner. All those opposed, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised until your name is called. Greg Kempa. Item 3.2 is approved on a recorded vote of 5-1.
Okay, great. Moving on to our third item. This is a consent application, B03 and B04 2020 for a property located at 753 and 755 Colborne Street. Is the applicant or agent present? Bruno, welcome. I'll just have you state your name and address for the record in the minutes, and then you can provide us the details of your applications. Bruno, I'll just get you to hit turn your mute off, please. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for your indulgence. I'm not very comfortable with this. All right. Did my name come through, or should I? Address is 34 Clearview Heights, King City, Ontario.
Perfect. Don't worry, Bruno. We're not comfortable with this at all either. So
Okay.
Take your time.
All right. The application before you proposes to sever a single family lot behind two properties that are in the corner of Colborne and Robinson Street. We acquired these last year. Our original intention was to propose a 9-unit condo townhouse on the site. But then it turned more personal. My work for the last 2 or 3 years has been in the Brantford, Kitchener, Hamilton area, and driving from King City means a 3-hour trip every day in the car, which has been tiring. So we're looking for a second home. And we changed our perspective on this because we became a little enamored, somewhat enamored with the area. So we're proposing to cut off the back of 753 and 755 and create a single family home on which we intend to build a 1,200 to 1,300 square foot bungalow. That home would serve as our own home. The other 2 properties we would keep as a rental as they are right now. The area seems to be in transition vis-a-vis the development at 54, I think it's called Glenwood, the 16-unit condo building behind Robinson on the west. So we thought that the 9-unit condo that we were originally going to do on the corner would be in keeping with that transitioning. We've since altered our plans and going with the proposal before you. It meets all the bylaws in terms of development criteria. I think I respectfully submit too that it meets the provincial policy statement and conforms with the growth plan. We reviewed the conditions of severance proposed by staff, and we have no objections to those. I've also noted that there's some opposition to it, which is not very welcoming from what our purpose is, but I hope to address whatever concerns are raised and hope that you see fit to grant the proposal.
That's great. Thank you, Bruno. Any questions from the committee to the applicant? And seeing none, I will invite staff in and they will present the recommendation in the report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair and members of the committee, we have received 2 consent applications for 753 and 755 Colborne Street. The applicant is proposing to sever the rear yards of both lots to create 1 lot fronting onto Robinson. The existing dwellings at 753 and 755 Colborne Street will remain. The proposed new lot will have a frontage of 15 meters and an area of 452 meters squared. The property is designated residential area low density in the official plan and is zoned residential type 1B in the zoning bylaw. The subject lands are 2 separate lots located on the south side of Colborne Street, east of Robinson Ave. This area of Colborne Street is characterized by a variety of uses, including single detached dwellings, a few apartment buildings, and commercial uses located along Colborne Street. Robinson Avenue and the remainder of the neighborhood is generally made up of single detached dwellings. This application was circulated to all departments and agencies, and no adverse comments were received. However, there are a few conditions that have been included, such as a road widening, daylight triangle, and the demolition of the accessory building. Next slide. So those are the 2 existing dwellings along Colborne Street. And next slide. That is where the proposed lot will be located. Next slide. So notice of the public hearing was issued by mail and posting of signs on site. We did receive input from several residents. We received a petition with 13 signatures in opposition of the severance, and we also heard from 3 additional residents, 1 through email and 2, 1 came in and 1 via phone. All concerns related to construction of a new dwelling on the property and issues with that construction, existing sight lines from dwellings, the lot size, and development in an established area. And I will address those concerns a little bit later on. So planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed consents are consistent with the direction set out in the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, and that the subject lands, which are designated low density, that the proposal is consistent with that designation, and as well as the new lot. The subject lands being zoned residential type 1B, the proposed new lot as well as the retained lots will all meet the zoning bylaw requirements. So planning staff are recommending approval of the new lot as the proposed lot is consistent with the lot areas and widths within the general neighborhood. There are existing lots along Robinson Avenue that have similar areas. And both the severed and the two retained parcels will have frontage on a municipal roadway with available municipal services and other utilities, and is a good example of infill in an established area. The new lot will be subject to site plan control if approved, so therefore staff will have another opportunity to address the design of the proposed dwelling, as well as any engineering concerns with the lot, such as grading. Upon completion of a site visit and review of all relevant policies, planning staff are supportive of the applications. The proposal is consistent with the applicable planning policy framework in the PPS growth plan and official plan, and planning staff recommend that applications B03-2020 and B04-2020 be approved subject to the attached conditions in appendices A and A1 of the report.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from the committee to staff? Seeing none. Okay, so I will at this time open it up to the members of the public. So I do have recorded here that we have one registered member of the public for this item. And we will have them join us. Jackie is here. So Jackie, the floor is yours. If you just introduce yourself and your address, and then you can provide us with some of your questions, comments, or concerns. And I'll just remind you to unmute yourself. Perfect.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Jackie Robar. I live at 19 Robinson Ave, Brantford. I oppose the proposed severance of the backyards of 753 and 755 Colborne Street to create a small building lot on Robinson Ave. An attached garage or room had to be removed from 753 Colborne Street to get the 15-meter frontage. I think that's 49 feet. Most properties on Robinson Ave have a frontage of 65 feet. Some are larger. Robinson Ave is just one block long, and all the houses on it are 80 to 100 plus years old. The house on Robinson Ave that is next to the proposed severance is separated by a narrow driveway. That frame house was built in 1905, moved to the present location in 1935. The Branch Historical Society went to that house last year and took pictures. I don't know the outcome of that visit, but what would happen to that house if the land next door was disturbed to create a foundation and the trauma of building? When I moved to Robinson Ave, it was mostly retired farmers. Over the years, the mix has changed, and we now have lots of young families with children. We have no sidewalks, and children play on the street under parental supervision. There is not a lot of movement on Robinson Ave. People like it there, and they tend to stay for many years. A new house on such a small lot would be totally out of place. We want to preserve our streetscape. It is important for the value of our mature neighborhood. I'm not alone in my opposition. I have a petition, and only one person was indifferent. Everyone else signed. They were either opposed or vehemently opposed. I was standing on the lawn talking to one of the neighbors, and another came across the street and said, "Where do I sign?" Another one said, "I was waiting for someone to come." I understand the reason for infill where appropriate. This is not appropriate. I received the report from the city last night and wish to voice my concerns on some of the items, if you'll bear with me. The recommendation C on page 38, that the proposed development is desirable and compatible with the surrounding area and will not result in adverse impact on surrounding properties. That is not true. It could not be further from the truth. The minimum square footage for a building lot in Brantford is 450 square meters. This lot squeaked in at 452 square meters. It still only has a 15-meter frontage, and all the other lots have 65 feet or more. Under item 7.4 on page 4 and 5 of the planning analysis, it ensures compatibility and integrity within the neighborhood. This also could not be further from the truth. And in regards to road widening, Robinson Ave is now 15 meters wide. The narrowest the city will allow is 18.5. That's what's required by the city. This is mentioned 3 times in the city report. Item 6.1 on page 3, item 7.4 on page 5, paragraph 2 and 3, and on page 16, the traffic and parking report. They're talking of widening the road in front of the proposed lot. My question is, the road actually going to be widened, or is the road allowance going to be widened? I'd like clarification on that. And I'd also like to know who came to Robinson Ave and actually looked at our street. We are a neighborhood. Please don't destroy my neighborhood. I thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate the comments and certainly very valid concerns. And you know, the level of attention that you've paid to the staff report, and you know, using the wording in the staff report is also, it's very important to do, and keep your comments to kind of a planning, kind of keeping your comments related to planning, and rather than kind of just voicing concerns that kind of are more personal to you. So that's good. That's a great start. And we appreciate that as the committee. We also appreciate receiving the petition with the signatures that we have reviewed for our consideration. I'll just ask at this time if any members of the committee have any questions of clarification for Jackie. And seeing none, so I will, at this time, I will close the public portion, and I will have staff provide just some clarification on some of the comments that were pulled out of the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Robar. Thank you for taking a look at the report in such detail. That's always very helpful. Just to address your one concern regarding the road widening. So any local road, the engineering department requires it to be 20 meters and Robinson is not. So through planning applications, we take the additional land. However, that does not mean the road will be constructed. It just means there's going to be additional city-owned land. So at this time, Robinson isn't intended to be widened. It's just if in the future they do need to do any works, that land is there. And with any committee of adjustment application, we always do a site visit. So I had visited the site several times to ensure that my opinion of whether the consent application was appropriate was sound. And although you're right that it is the smallest frontage along Robinson, there are lots along the street that have similar areas within about 20 square meters or so. The lot does meet zoning, so they're not asking for any relief in that area. And then if you look in the larger neighborhood, Echo Villa, for example, there's lots there that we are kind of basing our opinion off of. And I think I've covered all your comments and questions, but if you do have any more, just let me know.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Any questions of clarification from the committee to staff? And seeing no hands, I will ask if a member of the committee is prepared to make the motion. Who's that? Who, sorry? Okay. Actually, I will backtrack. I will give Bruno an opportunity to provide his response to Jackie's comments and staff's further comments. So Bruno, the floor is yours. And I'll just remind you to hit the unmute button.
Am I there? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Just to address some of the points that raised by hopefully my future neighbor on the garage. If any of you have driven by the site before that carport was taken down, you may have seen how disrepaired the roof was. The actual garage to the house remains, but over the years, I guess the previous owner had built a carport there, and it had gone into bad repair. The roof members were bad. The shingles were all in disrepair. I mean, I have photos of those if you want. So we took that part of it down. In terms of the frontage in the area, we could make the lot a little bigger. We frankly don't see the need to. I know that the new planning paradigm sometimes is offensive to existing residents. You know, they're used to 50, 60-foot frontages. This lot would be considered large under the new planning paradigm. And on a 50-foot frontage or a 49-foot frontage, a 12 or 1,300 square foot bungalow is by no means elaborate. And nor do we intend to make it a standout in the community. We intend to add to the neighborhood, not to take away from it. In terms of compatibility, addressing the issue of compatibility is as long as the day. What constitutes compatibility? Is it design? Is it roof peaks? Is it exterior facades? What is it? You know, over the years, I've always found that the common denominator to compatibility is set by the city, by the municipal government. What is the minimum standard of development in an area? Now, Brantford has gone even further than that, and which I appreciate, that they also have site plan control here. So site plan control regulates facades, regulates roof peaks, regulates heights, and we're prepared to submit ourselves to that. So in terms of compatibility, I don't see any compatibility in terms of exterior finishing or room or home designs and so forth. And if we rely simply on lot sizes, etc., I think that the influencing factor should be what does the city set as the minimum standards. We could make this lot larger. We chose to go this route, and because we're quite satisfied that we can conform in all respects. I think road widening has been addressed by our planner, and I appreciate that. You know, we're not opposed to the road widening, nor are we opposed to the daylighting triangle, which is a requirement of engineer. We're pleased to do that. I don't wish to put a bad taste in the existing neighbors' mouth. And I just want to assure them that, we're quite, I would say, use the word expert in building. There'll be no damage done to the house next door. And nor will we build a home that is an eyesore in the community. It will be an addition to the lovely neighborhood that it is. Those are my comments, and if you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you, Bruno. Much appreciated. Any questions or clarification from the applicants? And seeing none. So now I will ask the committee if they are prepared to make a decision on this application. I'll be looking for a motion to be put on the floor. Greg?
Hi, Mr. Chair. I would move that application B03/2020 and B04/2020 regarding 753 and 755 Colborne Street be approved as shown in the agenda.
Perfect. And seeking a seconder, Virginia? Any discussion on the motion? Lee?
Through Mr. Chair, I just want to make a comment with regards to the concerns of the neighbor. And I've done this before in previous meetings, but just for the neighbor, with regards to things like this, we see these applications, monthly, and while we can emphasize or sympathize with you that the fabric of the neighborhood is going to change a little bit, things like this is how the city is moving forward. There is a provincial policy and statement in place. There's provincial growth plans. There's a lot of things that are pushing for infill developments like this. And from a land use planning perspective, it does make sense. Unfortunately, things are going to change a little bit, but I want you to understand that there's everything in place to make sure that the development is consistent with other houses in the neighborhood, and so that it is the least amount of change that can occur while putting a home in there. So I just want you to find solace in that the city does monitor these things, and there are site plan arrangements, and there are other things that the developer has to follow to make sure that it's not as intrusive as you may be thinking in your head. But we do take everything into consideration, and I just wanted to let you know that.
That's great. Thank you, Lee, for those comments. Any other comments on the motion or discussion? So seeing none, I will ask our clerk to call the vote.
All those members in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised until I've called your name. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Namizniak. Item 3.3 is approved unanimously, noting that Christina Brooks was no longer in the meeting at the time of the vote.
That's great. Thank you. And yeah, I think we are working to get Chris back, and if she does join us, that would be great. So moving on to the next item. This is a consent application for 41 Johnson Road. I'll have our applicants and the owners join us. Mr. Phillips, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you want to introduce yourself and your clients there, and just provide us with with your names and addresses, and then the floor is yours to outline the proposal.
It's Bob Phillips from JH Cahoon Engineering Limited, 440 Hardy Road here in Brantford. Dave and Kira.
Hi, I'm Kira Gurman.
And Dave Hind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is an application to sever a large lot off their land holding. It has a frontage of 23 meters and an approximate area of 840 square meters. They plan to build a home on the property. They've initiated site plan approval applications as well as lifting of a holding provision. The lot complies with the zoning bylaw. And we read the planning staff report and the conditions attached to it, and they're supportive of the planner's recommendation. We're just here to answer any questions that the committee or yourself might have.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions of the applicants or agents from the committee? Seeing none, we'll have staff join us and present the details in the report.
Okay, Chair and members of the committee, a consent application has been received for 41 Johnson Road. The applicant is proposing to sever one new lot and retain the existing dwelling and remnant land. The proposed new lot will have a frontage of 23 meters and a lot area of 840 square meters. And the retained land will have a frontage of 74 meters and a lot area of 13,600 square meters. Next slide. The property is designated residential area low density in the official plan and is also within a modified policy area, which number 44, and is zoned holding residential type 1B special exception zone. You can go to, so that's the existing dwelling on the property, and the previous slide was where the lot will be located. So the subject lands are located on the southeast side of Johnson Road, and the lands currently contain that single detached dwelling and two large accessory buildings, with the remainder of the land being vacant and covered in natural vegetation. Southeast of the site is the CN Rail corridor, and beyond that is County of Brant lands. And along Johnson Road in this area are single detached dwellings, a few small businesses, and to the east along Johnson is a residential subdivision. This application was circulated to all appropriate departments and agencies, and no adverse comments or objections were received. However, a road widening is required for a portion of the site to match the existing road width along Johnson Road. Notice of public hearing was issued by personal mail, as well as posting a sign on the site, and there were no comments received from the public for this application. So application B05-2020 was reviewed in the context of provincial policy, including the provincial policy statement and a place to grow. And planning staff is of the opinion that the proposed consent application is consistent with the direction set out in the PPS and conforms to the growth plan. Planning staff are also of the opinion that the proposed consent meets the intent of the official plan as it stands, as well as the modified policy area. The subject lands, as mentioned, do have a holding on them. The applicant has mentioned that they have applied to remove that holding, and that is currently ongoing. It has been included as a condition of consent that that holding be removed prior to the consent being finalized. They have also applied for site plan as well, which was mentioned, which has been included as a condition of consent as well. So the proposed lot area and width for the severed parcel is generally consistent with the residential lots in the area, specifically the lots located east of the subject lands. And the retained lands will be oversized. However, Johnson Road is made up of a variety of residential land uses and sizes, so it will be consistent as well, as there are oversized lots in the area. As per our site plan control bylaw, any development on the proposed new lot will be subject to site plan control, and that is for the infill lot. Planning staff recommend that application B05-2020 be approved, subject to the attached conditions in Appendix A, as it is consistent with the provincial policy framework and the official plan.
Great, thank you very much for the information. Did I have any questions from the committee members to staff? Lee, I see you have your physical hand up. I assume that also means you have a question. If you want to just unmute yourself and you'll be.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm going back and forth here. Through you though, the noise and vibration study that was completed, just a question to staff. Is that a requirement of this, or is that just that's just an add-on that was put in here as well?
So through the chair, the noise and vibration study, it was submitted alongside the consent, and it was also submitted along with the holding application. The holding is on the property because of the rail line, which abuts the property to the south. So through that application, the noise study is being reviewed. It has, so that's the intent for the holding. With this application, there was D6 guideline report submitted, which basically addresses whether or not the proposed lot is within proximity to industrial uses, and that plan, that report, sorry, said that any industrial uses are far enough away.
So, Mr. Chair, is it any concern that the report is done by the same engineering firm that's also working on behalf of the applicant to put a house here? Is that any, I mean, I guess obviously it's not a concern that it's in here, but it just seems odd to me that the same firm can do the report, which is a core requirement to say that this is a lot that can be put here that's going to be building on there. Does that make sense?
Through the chair, we do see applications submitted all the time with the same engineer if they're building as well as doing the reports. We kind of rely on the engineer's code of ethics for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, perhaps Mr. Phillips can make note of that comment and provide some clarification towards the end here.
Mr. Chairman, would I be able to just clarify that response from planning?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, to the member or committee member, the consent approval or recommendation has got a set of required conditions. The conditions relay back to the holding removal. So that's yet another process that will have to go to council to be lifted. In circulating that staff or that application, as well as the report prepared by the engineer, it's also reviewed by our municipal engineers to ensure that they are satisfied with the recommendations identified in that consulting report. So there is that check and balance in place before the consent or lot is created and the holding lifted. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Joe, for that explanation. So at this point, I'll just open it up to the members of the public. So I'll make it known at this time that there were no public registrations for this application, and I'll also make mention that Chris, committee member Chris, is back with us. She is joining us on the phone, so we do not have a visual. Chris, but we will make sure that if Chris has any questions, Chris, just feel free to interrupt.
Okay, thank you. I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any questions for staff or the applicants?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, I'll just ask you to provide a further clarification to Joe's comments. If I thought Joe did a great job, but if you have anything more to add, now's your opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Joe mentioned, not only is the report reviewed by the city, but it's prepared in accordance with the standards. It's not unlike many situations where multiple reports are done by the same engineer for a property. Whether they be stormwater management, grading, or in this case, noise and vibration. Hope that clarifies that item.
That's great. Thank you. Any further questions or clarification from either the applicants or the agent from the committee?
I'm sorry. Can I just ask one question?
Yeah,
Chris. What item are we on? Because I was totally gone out of this.
Sorry, we are on consent application B05-2020 for 41 Johnson Road.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll ask at this time if there's a committee member is comfortable putting a motion on the floor. Virginia?
Yes, I'd like to move that application B05-2020 for the lands to sever parcel land for at 41 Johnson Road be approved as noted in the agenda.
Okay, and Greg will be our seconder. Any discussion on that motion? Chris, are you comfortable with the information that you've been able to hear and review?
Yes, I read the reports and everything, and I'm in agreement with it, so I will be voting for it.
Okay, excellent. So I'll have our clerk call the recorded vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand and leave it raised. Those on the telephone, I will get your recorded vote thereafter. All those in favor, Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Namizniak, and Christina Brooks. May I please get your vote for or against?
Yes, I am for.
Thank you. So item 3.4 is approved unanimously on a recorded vote.
All right, perfect. So moving on to our final item this evening. This is a consent and minor variance application for 125 Sherwood Drive. And it's my understanding that the applicants are requesting a deferral. And I'll just have the agent, Mr. Phillips, again, if you want to just provide us a little bit of background and kind of formally make the request to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we received the planning staff report towards the end of last week. And although the recommendation was not a total surprise to us because that was communicated by planning staff, we did request the deferral to maybe seek some alternatives to the proposal. It was originally a small severance at 125 Sherwood Drive that resulted in a need for a minor variance as well, but we are seeking the deferral tonight.
Okay, excellent. I'll make mention at this time that there are no members of the public who have registered for this item. I'll look to staff to provide any comments on the deferral. Are staff open and accepting of the deferral?
Yes, we're we've heard of the deferral and we're fine with it moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Any questions from the committee to either staff or the applicants in regards to the deferral? Okay, so we will vote to defer the application. I'll look for a motion to defer. Greg?
Mr. Chair, I would move that applications B06/2020 and A08/2020 regarding 125 Sherwood Drive be deferred.
Okay, and a seconder? Lee? Any discussion on that motion for deferral? Seeing none, I'll just add that I would assume that there's no specific timeline tied to the deferral and that we'll just allow the applicants and the agent to work with staff to perhaps come back with a revised proposal. So at this time, I'll have our clerk call the recorded vote.
All those in favor of the deferral of item 3.5, please raise your hands and leave them raised until your name is called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Lee Reiner, Greg Kempa, Dan Nemizniak, and Christina Brooks, who is on the phone. Are you voting for or against?
For.
For the deferral? The deferral
Yes.
has carried unanimously on a recorded vote.
Okay, perfect. And if Mr. Phillips is still on the call, he's got some time to clean his office. Unless that was one of those background things that you can throw up there. So that concludes the items on our agenda this evening. I will look for my next steps, where we will look to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, which was, believe it or not, way back in February. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the February meeting? And I'll look for we just call a vote to accept. A mover. I'll look for a mover to accept the minutes, please. Lee? And a seconder? Virginia? So now we will call a vote. Will this one be recorded as well? We will be recording this vote.
Julia, I'm going to assume that I can't vote because I wasn't there.
Through the chair, actually, you are able to vote even if you were not there. You just would not have been permitted to be the mover of said minutes. But you can vote to put them in the record as accepted. So all of those in favor of the motion to accept the minutes, please raise your hand and leave it raised until your name has been called. Tara Gaskin, Virginia Kershaw, Lee Reiner, Dan Nemizniak, Greg Kempa, and Christina Brooks on the phone. Are you voting in favor of adopting the minutes?
Yes, in favor.
Thank you very much. The minutes are approved unanimously on a recorded vote.
Okay, so at this time, I'll just ask our clerk or our planning staff if there's any items for information or consideration. Do we have an idea of when our next committee meeting will be? And if it will follow the same format?
Thank you. Through the chair, in regards to the virtual meeting setting, we are still moving forwards with the regular committee of adjustment schedule now that we have figured out the dynamics of a virtual meeting. So the next meeting is scheduled still for July 15th, as was the previous adoption by the committee itself. I believe it was July 15th. 15th or 16th. So we do have the July meeting and August meeting moving forwards. We will maintain this format until further notice, just due to the number of persons permitted in the rooms themselves, as well as the social distancing requirements. So congratulations on completing your first virtual meeting, but get used to this format for now.
Yeah, that's right. I just like to thank the committee members for working through this. I should have mentioned at the beginning as well to any members of the public who are watching us live on YouTube, or perhaps are going to, catch up on the latest episodes of Committee of Adjustment, City of Brantford. If you have any questions or any comments, or just looking for information of any of the applications this evening or future applications, I just encourage you to reach out to staff. They're here to help, and they will provide you with the information that you need. So, anyone else have any comments,
Mr. Chairman,
Joe?
in terms of other business, I believe some of you may have been asking about a previous matter back in that February meeting about a deferral for 11 Manor Place, and that was the shed, proposed, existing shed with within the proximity of the swimming pool. Staff was able to speak with our legal department respecting that. We did reach out to the applicant about proceeding to today's meeting. Unfortunately, they weren't available. We will be bringing it forward to the subsequent meeting that Madam Clerk had just identified for next month in July. But I think the short of it is, if I can't make that meeting, I'd like to provide some feedback with respect to the consultation we had with the legal department. So the planning report is vetted by legal, and so they're not opposed to planning's recommendation. There's other matters that come about with respect to the civil liability to deal with the issues and merits of the application before this committee. Staff can provide some additional training with respect to that, because unfortunately I wasn't present in the February meeting, but I understood that there is a lot of concerns from some of the members respecting the decision and perhaps liability associated with it. I think the other thing is that it is a concern that staff had identified in terms of supporting that particular minor variance. And it is the intent of the zoning bylaw to uphold public safety. And then we have that in the bylaw itself. So I think those are some of the things that need to be considered. And once again, we go back to the Planning Act. The Planning Act refers to those 4 tests. And Planning Act does not assess or determine liability as a planning issue. So I think those are the things that you need to, really focus on when you are prepared to hear that matter again and make your decision. And once again, it's the role of this particular committee to approve or refuse in this particular circumstance. So that's pretty much my consultation with the legal department. Planning staff's of the same opinion with respect to those remarks. If there's any questions you may have of that, I just wanted to make sure that this committee was aware that we did already have that conversation with planning and the legal department. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you, Joe. We will keep those comments in mind for whenever that item does come back on the agenda. So if there's nothing else, again, I'd like to thank you for attending. Thank you for joining us. Oh, staff has some additional comments.
Further to the application for 38 Morton Ave that had been appealed, the application's appeal has been taken back from the owner, or from the person who appealed. So there's no longer that application for the LPAT. Yeah, so that's the update on that.
Mr. Chairman, since we're on the point of LPAT, and just to enlighten the committee, the LPAT is still not proceeding with full-on hearings as of yet. And at the time when the emergency order was issued, or declaration by the province, There was one matter that was supposed to be heard in March, and it was the matter, in fact, that was, I believe, the tie vote of this committee. And that was for, I believe it's 396 Park Road North. Correct me, Ms. Mathers, if I got the address incorrect, but I believe that the LPAT will be looking at rescheduling hearings shortly. And maybe by way of what we're doing here today virtually, they may be considering virtual meetings. We've not heard anything yet in that regard, but we will keep this committee apprised of what the LPAT next steps would be.
And just to confirm, it's 395 Park Road North.
Okay, perfect. If there's nothing else, I will set you free. And thank you again. And I will close the meeting. Stay safe, stay healthy. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.